Special meeting to order. Today is April 5th. I'm going to welcome everybody here this evening, and do we need a roll call vote? It says roll call, but we're all here, so I think we're great. Alrighty, if we can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first agenda item is comments from the audience. So if you have a green card still out there, please hand it forward so we know how many people we have speaking this evening. And I am going to read, I'm not going to call it brief, just a long statement of comments from the audience, and then Mr. Cook has those. He'll shuffle them up so it's all fair on who gets brought up first. Individuals who wish to address the board are to identify themselves, their address, which you can just have it on your green card, and any organization they may represent. Individuals who wish to address the board to direct their comments should direct their comments to the entire board and not to individual board members, the superintendent, who's not here, or other school district employees or members of the audience. Behavior that is intemperate, abusive, defamatory, or discourteous to others, or otherwise interferes with the orderly conduct and timely completion of the work of the board will not be tolerated. Audience participation at board meetings is limited to the portion of the meeting designed as public comments. At all other times during a board meeting, the audience shall not enter into discussion or debate on matters being considered by the board. A person may address the board on an agenda or non-agenda item by completing a green note card located inside the boardroom. I think that everybody's done that. If you haven't and you have one, please pass it up. We want to make sure that you are able to come to the podium and that your voice is heard. A delegation of more than 5 persons addressing the same issue shall be encouraged to appoint one person to present their views before the board. I think tonight we have a manageable group so that we can get to the work of the board. We will allow 5 minutes based on the number of green cards that we have. Board members will hear comments during public comment. According to policy, board members cannot respond or enter into discussion with the audience during the meeting. And the board president may direct administration to investigate items and report back to the board or individual citizens, or to contact that individual who comes to the podium. So, Mr. Cook, if you want to call up our first.
Mr. Woods.
Good afternoon. I'm in some ways sort of interested to see what happens over the next couple of weeks and months with the potential changes that are in the offering, and I'm referring to the superintendent change with Dr. Matthews going to Rockford. For a lot of us in the communities, we moved to Novi because of the high academic standards, and that comes from leadership, you all's leadership, the superintendent's leadership, the assistant superintendent's leadership as well. And so I think as parents who are concerned about ensuring that our standards of education are high for our kids, our children, I would like to say that if it's at all possible in the process that you all are about to embark on, to engage, encourage, invite as many of the parents, the community, the businesses, all of those who are stakeholders in this effort to support you all in your work. I've observed other districts where they've hired outside consultants, they've had parent groups, they've had all different ranges of engagement. But I think this is an opportunity to make our district better, to come together. I've been talking about unity for the past 3 or 4 years. I think this is that moment in time where we actually can come to an agreement that this is a new day, and whoever we choose, I think this is a moment in time where we can really come together. I'll also say it's incumbent upon us as parents. us as community members to try to also support this board and support this new superintendent, whoever that might be. And if we think about what it means for our kids, if we think about what it means for our own future, I think we're at a moment in time where we can really have a positive impact and be a model community for others across this country. One last thing. I do believe that in the work that you all are doing, the process that you're about to embark is very tough and very hard. And I would like to say that we respect the process. And as a community, I hope that as you go about it and go through, I think, a very difficult period of time, know that you're supported in a lot of different ways. So I'm not going to take up all the time, but I just want to say those remarks. And good luck and Godspeed in the process.
Thank you, and thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Mrs. Mutch, Sarah Mutch.
Hello, I'm Sarah Mutch. I live at 21552 Chase Drive. And I'm here tonight to ask that the board consider Dr. R.J. Weber as the next superintendent of our district. When faced with the task of appointing a superintendent for the district, the Novi School Board operating procedures dictates that the board shall actively seek the best qualified and most capable candidate for the position of district superintendent. And I know this is going to be a hard, difficult process to undergo, and I truly do support you in what you're about to embark on. There are very few directives included in the section of the operating procedures about the superintendent succession procedure, besides that very one that I just read. Sorry, jumping around here. The operation procedures go on to describe many actions that the board may consider taking, including participation from members of the community. And so here we are. The community is speaking out in loud support of Dr. Weber. From what I understand, the board has received numerous emails from the community advocating for the promotion of Dr. Weber. One of those emails came from me. I have 3 children. The oldest is a first grader at Orchard Hills, which means his first year of school was at the fall of 2020. There was no kindergarten roundup. There were no back-to-school nights or any opportunities for me to get myself into the building, to meet the teachers or the principal. That was hard for this first-time mama, who also has some anxiety issues, and sending one of my most precious creations off to a school I had never been to spend the day with a teacher I had never met in person, was really difficult for me. Thankfully, Colin returned from every in-person day with a big smile on his face because of the amazing teachers at Orchard Hills. It is because of all of that I opted to get involved as co-president of the PTO at Orchard Hills, a position that I've been lucky to be in for the last 2 years. With this responsibility, I have had the privilege to participate in a monthly 2-hour-long Zoom meeting led by Dr. Weber. Sometimes it's a little longer than 2 hours, as many of my other PTO presidents who are here in the audience can attest to. And as many of you know, Dr. Weber speaks very freely and prides himself on building transparency between the district and its parents. In turn, I've learned a lot about what drives him: a passion for education, a focus on mental health first, and advocacy for students of all kinds. Because of that, I have no doubt that Dr. R.J. Weber will be an outstanding district superintendent. My request is that he have the opportunity to do so here in Novi. When I heard the news that Dr. Matthews was headed to Rockford, I'd called my sister, a school district leader on the west side of the state, and I told her there was a great opportunity for her here in Novi as the new superintendent. And she laughed and said, well, why would Novi look further than Dr. Weber? She had had the opportunity to hear Dr. Weber at a conference just a few weeks ago, and she came back from that experience inspired and impressed by this amazing leader. There is no doubt that losing both Dr. Matthews and Dr. Weber will have a monumental impact on our district. You have the ability to keep that from happening. And sure, I know with the power of Novi, we'll find some great candidates, and I know that you guys will make the best decision. But my question is, will they be of the same caliber as Dr. Matthews or Dr. Weber? Make the decision today to keep Novi number one and keep Dr. Weber. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Sarah. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Mr. Asher.
Hello, and thank you for all that you do as a board to help our community, staff, and students. I am David Asher, the current principal at Novi Woods Elementary School. For 27 years, I've been honored to be a teacher and administrator in Novi. And in that time, I've worked for several superintendents and assistant superintendents. Each, in his and her own way, has helped make our district what it is today. I'd also like to take this opportunity to publicly acknowledge and thank Dr. Matthews for his 11-plus years of service to this remarkable school district. His leadership and compassion has made a profound impact on many of us, and he has for sure positively impacted our students. I also want to inform the board that I appreciate the difficult position that you are in to fill the superintendent vacancy. There are challenging decisions to be made around the who, the how, and the when. Yet we do look to you. We look to you for your leadership. What you do and how you do it trickles across our entire school district and community. Regardless of the outcome, I will respect and continue to support the young people, their families, and the staff in Novi. I'm sure over email and yet tonight you will hear many accolades about Dr. Weber this evening. I could add to that list. I would, however, prefer to add a very personal story with what I believe is unique in my 27-year perspective. While I am proud of all of my years in Novi and the work we did and continue to do, we were not always the Novi we know today. We have not always had an articulated, transparent curriculum. We have not always had a full continuum MTSS process. We've not always had the language to talk about our remarkable diversity as a strength. And perhaps most importantly for me, we've not always been able to discuss mental health in proactive ways. In fact, mental health struggles were sometimes seen as taboo topics. Yes, we had counselors and social workers at some levels, but the breadth of supports and capacity that we have today is needed more than ever. You might not think this is a big deal until it happens to you. If there are moms and dads streaming this right now with their kids, I would encourage you to maybe pause a second and step away, because you might want to review what I'm going to share out before you share it with your kids. I don't say this to alarm anyone, but I do say to make you aware that what I'm about to say may not be 100% okay for youngest ears. I've never shared it publicly, but it does need to be said. About 4 years ago, I experienced feelings I'd never experienced. I was having thoughts of hurting myself, severely hurting myself. I didn't know what was happening, but voices in my head were telling me that I wasn't worthy and that there were easy ways to affirm those voices. I exploded in and stormed out of this room in an administrative council meeting. I yelled at Dr. Matthews. I yelled at Dr. Weber. I was short with several colleagues. I was short with my wife. I wasn't eating well and I saw no hope. Before I sought therapy, before I hit absolute rock bottom and with much support from my wife and my faith, I sought therapy. Who knew? Who knew I wasn't superhuman? Who knew that the depression I'd observed in my family would impact me? Who knew that I was struggling to come to grips with our daughters growing up way too fast? Or that I was still grieving after a dear friend had passed away 6 months previously? Who knew incidents at school would open the doors for these evil, sick voices to speak to me, to whisper to me, to tell me to do things to hurt myself? Who knew that I was sick? Actually, there's an answer to those questions. I met with Dr. R.J. Weber. I apologized. To say he was understanding is an understatement. He was grateful I had sought therapy. He accepted my apology. He encouraged me to meet with him and Dr. Matthews together. He shared his own mental health struggles, and he put in perspective that therapy is a journey and that he would walk that journey with me if I ever needed it. And while I'm pleased with where I am today, he continues to walk with me. This is just my story. I only have an inkling of all of the mental health struggles that exist in our community and our staff. I pray daily to help young people and others who may silently be struggling. I share my story tonight so they might not silently struggle. I also share my story to remind everyone our district did not have this capacity prior to Dr. Weber's time in Novi. I know our time is going to run short. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you so much for you do. It's a difficult time.
Thank you, Dr. Asher. We appreciate all you do every day. Mr. Asher, sorry, you can be Dr. Asher today.
Mr. Mitchell.
Jason Mishner, Harrier Place. Thank you for having this meeting tonight so that we could express our thoughts and feelings to you as you make this difficult decision. I think you are in this rare place where you've been blessed with such talent and skillful administrators that their talents have been noticed and desired by other districts outside of our own. And it would be hard enough if we were just losing Dr. Matthews. And I surely appreciate his leadership over these last, over a decade, to lead the school and help the school district be what it is today. And that alone would be a challenge for you. And I recognize that. And I think to do a search to replace him would be quite a challenge. I think the unique position you find yourself in now is that within less than 7 days, you may also lose your number two, your assistant superintendent, RJ Weber. Dr. Weber is extremely talented as well in his own right, and brings with him a unique skill set that I think is going to be hard to replace. And I think the evidence of that is the fact that another school district is searching after him while he's currently employed here. If there were a lot of Dr. Webers, then we probably wouldn't have to worry about replacing multiple administrators in our district at the same time. So I think you have two scenarios, maybe three, but really two. So as you're all probably aware, Dr. Weber interviewed tonight with Northville School District, and they have a final interview next week on Monday, I think Monday and Tuesday, the 10th or the 11th. And they'll probably make an offer, and it looks like if he's offered that position, then we'll have a significant loss here in the district and potentially more people that would leave after them. But you have a small, very small window to make a very shrewd and swift decision. As mentioned by somebody else, the bylaws only say that you shall appoint a superintendent for a certain amount of time and money, and that you shall do it, you shall seek the best one available, and that you shall do any interviews and conduct them publicly. That's the only things that you must do by the bylaws. Everything else is up to your purview, and I'm sure you're going to meet with legal counsel later and figure out what that process looks like. May I suggest that process could look something like, let us put together a package for Dr. Weber that is greater than the limit set forth by the competing school district, which I believe is $220,000 to $235,000. You could make him an offer greater than that and an attempt to retain him before their final, even this Thursday at the board meeting, present that and potentially interview him publicly and be able to lock that in. If not, there's a good chance you'll lose him, and you won't have that nice opportunity, which I think everybody would like, where you could have him as one of the many candidates in your search for a superintendent. So I think that is your unique challenge. If you choose not to act that way, then we will most likely be looking to replace both our superintendent, and he will or she will have to replace, at least the assistant superintendent, if not some other slots. So I think that is your unique challenge. It's a testament to how talented our leadership is, but it is also a very time-sensitive issue. And I hope you would consider that when you meet with legal counsel later today to discuss, I'm assuming their written opinion, which I'm guessing is the reason for the closed session. So I would hope that you would strongly consider that as an option. Ultimately, the decision is yours. But I hope you wouldn't dismiss it out of hand as something that you can't do or that you shouldn't do. As testament to many people I'm sure you'll hear today, I think that is a very viable, a very wise decision that you could make. And like I said, you only have a limited time to make that decision. So if it seems like it's a good decision 8 days from now, you may no longer have that choice. So it is very tough, the task set before you, and I pray that you have all the wisdom and guidance you need to make a very wise decision for our children and for our district so that Novi will continue to be the center of excellence it is today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Mrs. Trumpy.
Hi, I'm Sharon Trumpy. The first thing I'd like to do is thank David Asher for his comments and his bravery tonight, and to thank Dr. Weber for similarly offering that kind of support to our family. I usually like to come here with a well-prepared statement, but I am full of emotion tonight. I have, over the past 2 years, been forced many times to share my own family's personal traumas with this board. I would have preferred not to. But I did that to advocate for my child and for other children in our district. And that has come at a tremendous cost to my family. It has come at a tremendous cost to my mental health and to my child's mental health. And very few people have expressed genuine concern for our well-being during that time. R.J. Weber is one of the people who has done that. And I appreciate that about him. And I think that's something that you should appreciate about your staff. I'm sure you would like to have a search process. The reality is that the decision you make tonight is probably your decision. Your decision to act or not act is a decision and will be seen as such. I was really disheartened to see an email come out less than 2 hours before the meeting, emphasizing that this was a closed session and not acknowledging the opportunity for public comment, which is due to us by OMA. And the fact that that email suggested that a search process would be engaged upon makes me question if your decisions are being made behind closed doors and how transparent you're being with your community. You're not dealing with a normal transition right now. It would be lovely if we were. We're not. And this is coming at a time where there are staff shortages, teacher shortages. We're recovering from COVID. You have multiple open Office of Civil Rights investigations ongoing right now. If anyone questions that, you can look it up. It's public. You recently hired an attorney for some mysterious investigation. There's a lot on your plate right now. And I don't know how much attention other people are paying, but I am paying close attention. And it appears to me that in the months ahead, you are going to be deeply in need of leadership from someone who has a depth of understanding of this community, an expertise, and who has demonstrated their commitment to our students. Not to you personally. This is not about whether you like Dr. Weber. This isn't about whether I like Dr. Weber. Dr. Weber has made me cry on occasion. I have had tough conversations with Dr. Weber about things that I have not liked. What I appreciate about Dr. Weber is when I have brought those concerns to him, he has listened to me. And I hope that you will listen. I have not felt listened to over the past several years. And I hope that your decisions were not made behind closed doors. I hope you are listening to your community and to our appreciation for Dr. Weber's expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Trumpy.
The Honorable Kelly Green.
Sorry, it's getting emotional back there. And honorable, I mean, I'm here as a parent and also as the state representative and a member of the school safety task force that we have in the House. The superintendents, as we know, are responsible for education, but they're also responsible for the health, well-being, and safety of our students, which has been the focus of this months-long endeavor that we've been doing. It's a bipartisan coalition. And I want to tell you a little bit about the work we've been doing and why I'm here today in support of Dr. Weber. I've spoken to experts across the state and this country in trauma, in school safety, in education, in security, in behavior and mental health. We have spoken to the Michigan State Police, the sheriffs, the prosecutors. I've spoken to educators, administration, students from across the state and here in my district, and especially here in Novi. I've spoken to parents who have suffered the unimaginable loss of a child whose children were murdered at one of the school shootings that occurs here in this country every day. I've spoken to countless Novi parents, teachers, administrators. One of the topics that comes up almost all the time is mental health. And what has happened here in Novi with the environment that has been created by Dr. Matthews and Dr. Weber is, after speaking to all these people across the state and all these different districts across the state, the work that's been done here in Novi is top-notch. It's some of the best that anybody has seen. Dr. Weber, Dr. Matthews are known and renowned throughout this entire state. I say this as, again, not just a parent, but as a state representative that has been doing this, and this is not in a biased fashion. This is what we are hearing throughout the state. I did sit down with Dr. Weber and Darby Hoppenstadt to discuss some of their ideas as to what we can do to foster an environment that will keep our children safe. And some of the recommendations that they have made have been run through the process, and I can tell you now that because of what they have said as well as other experts, some of those ideas are making their way through state legislation. And I believe ultimately we're going to see unprecedented dollars being thrown towards students' mental health and school mental health in that capacity. And some of the best people I personally have ever met in my life are right here in this room. They are sitting in that back row. They take care of my kids, they take care of your kids. And as a result of the culture that has been created by Dr. Matthews and Dr. Weber, I know my kids are going to be okay. And your kids are going to be okay because of what they've done. The cultures they've created, whether a lot as it pertains to social emotional learning, academics, support to students, MTSS, and this has been during a time which is very arguably one of the most difficult times our public schools have ever faced. And to all of you, you've been through the ringer with COVID. I understand that. And there has been a lot of divisiveness that has occurred. People are fleeing education. My husband's a teacher. My father's a teacher. The pool is not as vast as many people think. It's not. You are seeing the same people interviewing. Bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Novi wants the best. Novi deserves the best. I do believe we have here the best, and they will continue to do good work and set the standards for the rest of the state. So I hope that you will take this in consideration, not just as a parent, but as what I've seen. And I know that I will have the opportunity to tell you more about the School Safety Task Force at an upcoming meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions, but again, I encourage you, please retain Dr. Weber. He is the best for our district and our kids.
Thank you, Callie.
Mrs. Bedoya.
Betsy Bodwine. Good evening, everybody. So first, I also would like to thank Mr. Asher, who I have not had the pleasure of meeting, but I've heard so many wonderful things about you. And hearing you speak about that very vulnerable moment in your life was very moving to me, and I really appreciated the bravery that required. Along that same note, I would share with the board that my first meeting with Dr. Weber was at the Novi Mental Health Group. And I'm not still involved with it. I've gotten busy with a bunch of other things, but I was dragged there by a friend of mine, basically, I think, just to get out of the house. And I went and was so moved by what I heard there and by the very deliberate way that we were trying to get ahead of some of these crises before they erupt, And I was so moved by what Dr. Weber was saying that I continue to be involved with that group for a long time. I've seen different things spin off from that group that have helped different members of the community. I know that the trauma education that was introduced with Dr. Nadine Burke's book, The Deepest Well, I know that was very meaningful to a lot of educators in our district as well as to myself personally. And I think that when we look at what kids need, a lot of times what they really need is what Dr. Weber provides for our leadership and for the children in this district. I sent you all a pretty lengthy email, and I hope that you took the time to read it amongst all of the many, many emails that you received. I do want to thank you guys for all of your consideration and the time, and I'm sure this is a difficult endeavor. I do echo, though, that losing our top 2 people at the same time would be a disaster in any district, let alone one that has the reputation that we have here. I would imagine almost everyone in this room lives here because of our school district. And that is in a large part due to those rankings, and that is in large part due to our administration and the leadership that is provided through them. So please consider moving quickly, because while you may be able to find one other good candidate, I really have a hard time thinking you're going to find 2 of the caliber that we have been blessed with here for as long as we have. Finally, I would like to conclude with a kind of off-topic thing here that I don't believe that having your top 2 people leave a district really paints you in a great light. I know we can come up with reasons this has occurred. We can say, well, this is because of this and this is because of this, and oh, it's all fine. But realistically, if I show up to a job interview and find out the last 2 people quit, I'm going to kind of wonder why. So I think that's something we should be aware of as we're trying to seek more candidates. Additionally, in terms of public perception, at the March 3rd board meeting, the board voted to hire outside counsel to avoid a conflict of interest in regards to an ongoing investigation. It was shared at that meeting that the investigation did not involve financial issues, and it did not involve anybody in the administration. A month later, this issue remains opaque. As much as I have tried, I cannot come up with a single reason that the district would need to retain additional counsel that would be positive for our district. Given the inevitable publicity hit our district will take when this comes to light, I would urge the board to act swiftly to retain Dr. Weber. The mass exit of administrators will and this negative publicity associated with this investigation will only serve to narrow an already narrow candidate pool even further. I urge you to please act swiftly and retain Dr. Weber. When we already have the best, we do not need to keep looking around. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
Mrs. Rahman?
Good evening. My name is Sujatha Raman. I have 2 children in the district. I'm not gonna take up too much of your time. I know you have, as other people have mentioned, received many emails from the community, from community members. I just would like to echo a few of the points that have been made, and that primarily that the Board of Education operating procedures dictate only the only mandatory criteria for succession of a superintendent is actively seeking the best qualified and most capable candidate for the position of the district superintendent. Mrs. Beaudoin just explained, right, that we're not going to find there is no better candidate out there than Dr. Weber, and that point is I don't know if anybody has had the opportunity if you watched any of the interview that Dr. Weber had today in Northville, but if you haven't, I encourage you to do so. I also encourage you to watch the interviews of the other candidates. My opinion, head and shoulders, Dr. Weber is the most qualified candidate, and I'm sure that Northville will also recognize that. We would be foolish not to recognize that when we already have him here in the district. The disruption of two administrators leaving at the same time is going to be very detrimental to the district. Finally, I'll just say that I appreciate the teachers and the building admins throughout the district. We have excellent people in all of those positions. However, leadership matters. And again, losing both of our top two leaders at once, it will be a very hard thing to recover from, and I don't think you will find a better candidate. If you employ a search, which is not mandatory, if you employ a search and at the end of the day come back to the idea that, oh, we had the best person, but it'll be too late by then, and that's a disservice to our district and especially our kids, which is who you're here to represent. So please keep that in mind. Please, please retain Dr. Weber as the new superintendent for the Novi School District. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Karam Abbas.
Hey everybody, I'm Abbas and I live in Asbury Park, so I'll keep this short. So I moved to Novi about 8 years ago, and at that time I was newly married and did not have any kids. Now here I am with 3 kids now, one of them attending Parkview Elementary. So last year we did decide to move. And at that time, right after COVID, I could have really moved anywhere in the US, and we were seriously contemplating moving somewhere warm. I mean, most of you are probably not from. So at that time, my wife and I talked, and the fundamental reason why we actually chose to buy a bigger house right here in Novi was the excellent school district. And again, this goes to all the excellent staff that we have, the board and everybody else, but most importantly, the leadership of Dr. Matthews and Dr. Weber. So for me, being an immigrant, the biggest thing was inclusion and diversity, and I really recognize those two in their efforts to really get the district to new heights. So all I'm here to say is just, my plea to the board to please try your best to promote and retain Dr. Weber. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Daraskovich? Daraskovich.
Yes, I know it's tricky.
I'm sorry.
Hello, my name is Tara Daraskovich. I come to you today as a mom and an educator. I want to start by thanking the board for all that you do. I have 3 daughters, and one is at the high school, a middle schooler, and then one at Deerfield. And we feel so blessed to be a part of this district, especially under your leadership. You have a big task ahead of you. As an educator, I realize the decision and how hard it's going to be for you. And I come to you because although I agree with everyone in this room, I also think that we really need to put a lot of thought and time into this decision. I don't think that choosing our next superintendent should be one that we make in a week's time. I wish that we had more time, and we do. We have until September. And so just like every position in a district, there's a process for hiring, whether it be the superintendent, a teacher, a parapro. There is a lengthy process. And I believe that our students deserve that same process for a superintendent. I think that it should be a thorough process. I think we should open it up. I think that even though we have Dr. Weber, I think that we would be amazed by the candidates that we might get. Every time there's an administrator posting, there's hundreds and hundreds of applicants for administrator positions. And so I imagine that the same would happen for a superintendent posting. And so my ask of you is that we give this more time, that we not rush. Our students deserve it. Like all of you, I moved here for the schools. And I just think it's too fast to make a decision like this. And so I would hope that you would give this more time and consideration so that we can pick the very best and we continue to grow as a district and be the district that brings people from across the country. So thank you again for everything. Thank you for listening to our voices tonight. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Thurman?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. You certainly do have a difficult decision. As Mr. Asher said, you have to think about who, how, and when. And all of those carry very different implications in our work. This is an extraordinary time, and you and all of us as a community are being put in an extraordinarily difficult position. To lose a longtime administrator, to lose 2 longtime administrators at the same time is a very difficult position, but it is one that this board has an enormous amount of control over in this moment. I want to start by saying how fantastic it is to see the kind of turnout that has shown up in our district in the many emails that I know have come to you from very non-typical people in the board and in our community, resounding their support. To the educators and to the administrators who are sharing with you what they think they need in this moment. Each of you, when you signed up to be on this board, agreed to be our voice in the community. You agreed to listen to what the community said was needed. And what we need and what our kids deserve is the very best of leadership. And we had that with Dr. Matthews and with Dr. Weber and every administrator and every educator that we have in this district. I do want to tell you, I have the privilege of working, as you know, professionally across the state with educators. And the administrators and the brand of this district speaks volumes. Everywhere I go in this state, people talk about Dr. Matthews and Dr. Weber. The reference that Sarah made about administrators on the west side of the state knowing who Dr. Weber is and the kind of innovation that he has given, I too could add to the list of accolades about what he has provided. It is a very challenging moment, but we have very high expectations and very clear expectations that we expect you to be listening to what your community and your staff are saying in this moment. And I'm going to add to the list of all the reasons why to talk about the disruption that our kids and educators deserve you to be managing in this moment. Losing 2 top administrators will cause disruption that is unnecessary, and it is in service of the possibility of someone with greater strength than the administrator that you actually have seen in practice demonstrate results, demonstrate trust building in the community on the promise of somebody who might be better. You should go watch the interviews of the candidates at Rockford. You should go watch the interviews of the candidates in Northville. You should go watch the interviews of the candidates who applied in West Bloomfield. And we are Novi. We are Novi proudly, and we will attract great leaders. But I want you to ask yourself, on behalf of every student and educator, what the risk is of causing that kind of disruption. The kind of disruption that comes not just in the interim of losing 2 administrators, but that the disruption that will come, that we have seen this pattern at many districts across the state. When one administrator leaves, it creates a downfall of disruption. Our educators and our students deserve the best, and they deserve a board that is thinking not about one person, but about how all the pieces come together to ensure the progress of this great district is not interrupted, not slowed down by 1 minute. I trust that this board has every capacity and certainly every opportunity by your own process to make those decisions. I hope you will.
Thank you, Mrs. Thurman. Do we have any other green cards that we may have missed? I didn't see anybody walk in late, but I want to just make sure that everyone has an opportunity. Okay. Seeing none, I think that we need a vote to go into closed session. Is that correct, Mr. Cook?
Yes, roll call vote.
Okay. If I can get a recommendation?
I'll move that we go into closed session for attorney-client privilege. Support.
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mr. Smith. We have a roll call vote, Mr. Mena, please.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Hood?
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Roney?
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Okay.
Good time, McDaffie.
We'll take a 10-minute break just so that everyone can leave the room, and I think our attorney will be here shortly, so thank you, everybody, for coming this evening.